Hello and welcome everyone to a Master of Social Policy program info session, Amplifying Your Impact. My name is Dan Ferris. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Assistant Dean for Policy Initiatives at the Brown School and Assistant Professor of Practice. I also lead education and training initiatives at the Social Policy Institute, which is a newly formed policy research institute university-wide, where I'm engaged in things like the Graduate Policy Scholars Program, a bit of food policy research, and a smattering of other things on any daily basis. I'm joined today by two amazing students who are going to lend their perspectives and experiences, as well as Sarah Dexter from the admissions office. So thank you all for being here today. Nicholas and Angelica, would you like to take yourselves off mute and just introduce yourselves before we get started?
Hey everyone, I'm Nicholas Asher. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a first year MSW, MSP dual degree student, and I'm excited to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Angelica Santiago Gonzalez. I'm a third year MSW, MSP student. I just finished my MSP year. I'm also a MSP graduate assistant. She, her pronouns, and it's really so nice to, hopefully, I can't see everyone's faces, but I see your names on the participants list. So it's so nice to have you here.
Terrific. And with Sarah's helpful prompt in the chat, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box as we go. We'll also welcome and encourage any questions. We've got a few slides and presentation that we'll talk through, and then we'll have plenty of time left over at the end for Q&A, but feel free to send those along as they're coming to mind. So welcome to the Brown School and welcome to Washington University in St. Louis. For those of you who are already here, this might be a little bit of a refresh. And for those of you who are considering joining us for future years, welcome. So the Brown School has a long-standing history in social work, public health, and social policy as a leader, as an innovator, and finding the connections between those three disciplines to advance change and advance equity. We do this by focusing in on a couple of different specific buckets, by having rigorous curriculum, by connecting students with relevant career opportunities and field opportunities and internships, through faculty and staff leadership, drawing from a remarkably diverse group of expertise and experience in the fields of social work, public health, and social policy. And last but certainly not least, applying these fields through its over 15 research centers and policy institutes, either housed at the Brown School or connected to the Brown School in some way. And so why policy? And in the week that we're having this week in particular, it almost sounds like a rhetorical question, but we'd actually like to spend just a little bit of time talking about this as we get started to give us some framing for our time together today. So needless to say, it's an incredible time to be building advanced skills, knowledge, and networks in policy, whether it's for your interests in advocacy and activism, or analysis and research, or administration and leadership. The MSP program specifically and the Brown School are designed to equip the next generation of policy leaders with what's needed to make an impact in the fields and the communities in which folks are committed to serving. And so there's clearly a tremendous need and opportunity alike to affect change at the community level and the population level. And this idea that policy practitioners are uniquely positioned to inform policy at each of the policy stages. And folks coming from the fields of social work, public health, and other related disciplines in particular are uniquely positioned and have an incredible opportunity not only to help to inform policy, but to lead policy change. And while we start to think about how this translates to the MSP program, I'd actually like to turn things over to Nicholas for a moment to talk about his why policy and what brought him to the dual degree.
Yeah, so I graduated with my Bachelor of Social Work about 2.5 years ago, and since then I have been working as a clinician in the mental health field and the developmental disability field as well. And throughout my experiences, I have seen how institutions and policies have been put in place that really limit people and hindered the work I was doing with clients, which motivated me to further my education to get a Master of Social Work and then also the Master of Social Policy dual degree on top of that. I was really drawn to the Brown School's Master of Social Work, Master of Social Policy program because I felt like I was getting a very human centered perspective from the Master of Social Work side of things, but also a very like analytical side from the Master of Social Policy, which would make me extremely marketable when I'm looking for a job after I graduate.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. And Angelica, how about you? Would you be open to sharing your why policy?
Yes, and excuse me if there is a lawnmower sound in the background. I am sorry. For me, I am very interested in child abuse prevention policy and policy work, and a lot of that was in kind of my own upbringing, working in child and adolescent psychiatric facilities and seeing how hard it is for a child to report, how hard it is for an adult to report years later, how the different states and even on a federal level, policies regarding child abuse and what dictates child abuse is very different state to state. How the definition, some people would say isn't very specific or comprehensive and isn't very conducive in protecting children. And also the work isn't exactly preventative, more intervening. So when I think about policy and I thought about the policy dual degree, again, sorry for the background, I was considering how policy touches on every single level of our lives in every stage. Not personal, on a local level, on a state level, etc., but also how that looks when it is translated into trying to stop and trying to stop abuse and creating programs.
Thank you so much, Angelica. And I'd also offer that it's probably much louder in your ear as you're sitting right by the window than it was coming through. We can hear you loud and clear. And my why policy is I've always been passionate about policy and politics. And I recognize the great privileges that I've had in my life, many of which are driven and derived specifically from the social policies that have been available to myself and my family. I also recognize that those policies aren't equitably created or equitably available. And so as I think about the work that I'm interested in doing academically, professionally, for my career, it's really at the intersection and tied into so many of the different areas and fields that people are pinging in the chat. Because while many of us have tailored interests or specific issues that we're passionate about, that we wake up in the morning thinking about, the root causes of so many of the things that drive outcomes across these issues can be shared, and by growing in our understanding of, we can be as impactful and effective in addressing them and advancing change in them as we possibly can. So thank you everyone for sharing about yourselves in the chat. Please do continue to ping your policy interests, your why. If anyone's ever looking for inspiration, Nancy Pelosi says that every morning that she wakes up, she thinks about 1 in 5 children in the United States living in poverty. And then she goes on to do, all of the superhero things she goes on to do during the day as the leader of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives. So the Master of Social Policy program itself, it's a 1-year program that combines foundational, elective, short intensive courses, along with a culminating internship where students take their classroom-based knowledge and apply it in a variety of real-world policy settings. The pathways into the MSP program, as it's designed to be done in connection with or associated with additional graduate work, is through a dual degree at the Brown School, either completed as a student's 2nd or 3rd year at the Brown School, along with the MSW program or the MPH program, as a paired degree, which is an option available for people who have completed graduate work previously in related fields to policy. So people who are looking to come back after spending some time in the field, whether that's a year or more, and building some of those analytical skills or applied skills in policy to increase the impact that you're able to have in your work. And then, of course, by all means, another one of the ways that students are engaged with the program, and one of the ways that we always keep a global perspective in the work that we're doing, is by having some very special partnerships with university partners and global partner universities around the globe. And so with students passionate about policy, not just across a wide range of areas and issues, but from all different experiences and backgrounds, we think is a real strength of the program, and something that will add value to the folks coming through the program and their experience, no matter where in the area, the country, or the world you're coming from. So a little bit more about the course design or the curriculum design. So we've identified 5 core areas where students take one of their classes at. So we're talking about policy analysis, of course, politics, economics, statistics, management, and leadership. The foundations of what we envision policy practice, policy research to entail. From there, students also build in short courses. These are designed specifically by Brown School faculty and leaders in policy for the MSP program. They're reflective of the skills that are of interest to students, as well as timely topics. And then, of course, elective courses. Students come into the program with a very broad range of interests and goals. And the elective courses that we've associated with the program reflect that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about some of these specific offerings as we go. We also have students who take advantage of being at one of the top universities in the world and take elective coursework either at the law school or the business school to supplement what the Brown School is able to offer. A little bit more about our foundations. So specific classes, what does your time in the policy program look like? So we start with these 5 foundational areas and 5 courses. If you are already at the Brown School and you're considering doing the program as a dual degree, it's possible you may have taken one of these classes. We have advanced classes that we've developed and designed specifically for the MSP as well that you can substitute in for these. So there's no need to take a class twice by any means. If you're new to the school, this is where you'd start. And then in your second semester, you'd be able to take those more advanced classes as electives. So for policy analysis, social policy analysis and evaluation, I have the privilege of leading a section of that this fall, and we'll be continuing to teach sections of that as we go. The politics of policy, we've actually identified 4 foundation course options for students based on their interests. So tied into domestic and international social and economic development and the interplay of policy, economic development, and politics. Or uniquely MSP classes, influencing policy implementation and politics, power, and the 3 branches of government. So really looking at the policy cycle, as well as how to influence and impact policy, not just from the legislative side, but also thinking about the executive, the bureaucracy, and the judiciary as well. A statistics course, foundational for policy practice, whether that looks like advocacy, activism, administration, especially research and analysis, is a foundational understanding and being a knowledge of statistics. And whether that's because you plan to consume research and analysis in your future career or produce it, it's a great starting place for many of our students. The economics of social welfare is an incredible opportunity for students to see the intersections in a unique lens that's uniquely Brown School of the intersections between economics, social welfare, social work, and public health. And of course, who could talk about policy without talking just a little bit about management and leadership? So the foundation courses, management and leadership of organizations for students who envision working in the nonprofit and NGO space. And then we're actually happy to announce a new course that we're launching next year, actually, public administration and government budgeting. So this is thanks to feedback from our current students looking at how to work as a government employee in the public sector, as well as benefit for those who are interested in affecting change in those sectors, understanding how public administration and government budgeting work. So a great starting place for anyone interested in policy. Those elective credits, again, 9 credits, typically done in the spring semester in your second semester, but sometimes students take 1 or even 2 of these in their fall based on their sequencing and when courses are offered. we grouped these classes into general buckets. So skills and analysis, program and policy development, economics and business, current issues and policy topics. So they're a little broad, but what fits under there are classes as diverse and unique as policy design lab, impact assessment, benefit cost analysis, behavioral economics and applied economics, policy, politics and power and global health, and more. And so when we think about the electives, students approach these in a number of different ways. Some will look for a broad range of class experiences and want to take a little bit of a lot of different areas. Others are coming in with a specific area of skill or a specific topic that they're really interested to build their own capacity around. And so they focus in a little bit better. One's not better than the other by any means. They're just different ways of thinking and approaching the coursework. Our short courses, as I mentioned, are uniquely MSP. So each year there's a call for proposals where faculty respond and design and lead courses for the MSP program that are offered both in St. Louis and then when travel allows in China as well, in partnership with our global partner universities. These classes represent, again, timely topics in policy as well as the expertise and passion of our faculty. And so there's a number of classes on the slide that we have offered previously. And then to give a peek of what's ahead, we've identified already 2 of the short courses that will be offered next year, social entrepreneurship policy in Asia and comparative governance and politics. So particularly for folks interested in issues around global trends, international issues, immigration as well. These could be some really interesting courses that might be of interest for people even attending today to take advantage of. And then the breadth and of the courses can also be reflected more broadly of what's listed here as well, which I believe Angelica was going to talk a little bit about one of her short course experiences in the program.
Yeah, I felt very fortunate to have taken Jessica Levy's Policy Development Through Gender Equity Lens course. One, I wouldn't have had Jessica Levy as a professor if it wasn't for the short course. 2, it really provided a more global perspective on health, policy, and gender on a global scale that I didn't quite understand previously. Also, some of the privilege that revolves around health and gender in the US that isn't seen in other parts of the world. So that was an amazing course. Jessica Levy is an amazing professor, highly recommend. But also when thinking about the short courses, also thinking about taking advantage of the opportunities to learn and from these potential mentors, these amazing professors who are real leaders in their field of expertise. They know their stuff. And also for one of the courses I wish I took, public economics and policy, that could help you later when you're taking more of an economics, when you're taking the economics class, the foundation. I really wish I took that course, but that's a benefit to the short courses as well. It helps build upon the knowledge you already have and also knowledge that you don't.
Thanks so much for that. And as one of the instructors from the public economics class, I'll actually just offer a brief thought about the construction of that course and why we think it's a great example of what the short courses can offer. So often in policy curriculum and more broadly, course content and curriculum can be presented in silos. You'll take a class in policy and program development or in economics or in policy analysis. And so both from an MSP cohort building experience and getting MSP students together and connecting with each other in unique spaces, as well as from a presentation where you are gaining knowledge and understanding of policy analysis as a science and a field, as well as public economics, the intersections of those, as well as where they diverge and how to use both as tools for advancing equity, we think is a really unique experience. Hope to see folks who are attending today in future iterations of that course and others. And then a culminating full-time internship. So typically, students spend the summer following their year of coursework applying classroom gained knowledge in different internship settings. And these can look a variety of different ways, which we'll give a couple of examples of in just a moment. But the goal here is really to think about both the internship experience as a learning opportunity, but everything from the moment you are applying to the Brown School and engaging with Brown School faculty and students, all the way through to when you are an alumni of the school, is an opportunity to be building and strengthening your network in policy and specifically the fields that you're interested in. And the internship search process, supported by the Office of Field Education, field faculty, and the program deeply, is a great opportunity and platform, not only for identifying a place and opportunity to apply these skills, but for increasing your own network, whether that's here in St. Louis, nationally or internationally. And so the internship experiences look a lot of different ways. They look like think tanks and research, advocacy and community nonprofit work, working in elected offices and government agencies. And so where students head is typically driven by their interests in policy, as well as what their future academic and professional goals might look like. And so no two internships are created exactly alike, but just to give a sense of the breadth of just where students have been and where they continue to go. We've had students recently spend time in fellowships on Capitol Hill with Congress members doing legislative internships in Washington, D.C., working internationally with foundations and different projects in the Dominican Republic and in China, working with research centers right on the campus, either in person or virtually, of course, at Washington University, continuing to build on the work, with faculty and otherwise. And then, of course, working for the think tanks and research centers, whether that's the Center for Research on Inclusion and Social Policy, where Roxy is actually now currently employed as an analyst, or thinking about SICUS and Sex Ed for Social Change, doing incredible work at the intersection of research as well as advocacy. So just a sampling of how some of our students have approached the internship. And I'll turn things actually back over to Angelica to talk a little bit about her recent experience with the County Executive's Office here in St. Louis.
Thank you, Dan. I feel lucky. A lot of the MSP experience for me felt very lucky, very fortunate. I learned a lot, and even with my internship at the St. Louis County Executive Office, I got to work under Molly Metzger. She's a professor at the Brown School, an amazing professor, an amazing advocate, very in tune into the St. Louis community, and several different issues surrounding housing and equity. There also Cora Faith Walker, who is such a powerhouse, knows everything about policies that that she needs to know. I would go into a meeting and Cora Faith will be speaking 100 miles a minute on different policy issues that are already on the table and how we should manage it, and then just send everyone on the team an assignment to look into it. And my role was really to do more research on certain policy issues and ways in which it's already been adapted in different cities and how we can adapt it here in St. Louis. And so that way we can kind of maybe push that agenda forward. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. It was great when it was in person because of the community building, the relationship building at the county exec building and office. But it was also good. It was also good when it was online. So there are pros and cons with the online and everything that happened with COVID, but the opportunities are still there, and the experience and the ability to learn is also still readily available.
Thanks again, Angelica. And of course, all of the learning that happens at the Brown School and during your time there and in the program isn't just based on your curricular activities. And so we wanted to just give a little bit of a sprinkling of what some of the offerings are in terms of the robust programming at the school. And as I've joked and sometimes commiserated with even Nicholas and Angelica previously, there are no shortage. There's sometimes more things to do and take advantage of than there are hours in the day. But we do take a lot of pride and love convening not just MSP students, but students from all three programs at the Brown School and even beyond in terms of our social policy seminar series. And so the goal of the seminars are to bridge research and scholarship with real world practice. And so some previous offerings we have here, we've brought in speakers, from places as diverse as the National Center for Access to Justice and the Arnold Foundation to Brown School faculty And so this semester, we've actually been very lucky. We'll say Molly Metzger's name again. She led our first fall seminar with Yusuf Scoggin from the department, from St. Louis County. And then next week, we have our second of the semester with Ellis Ballard and Saris Chung talking about system dynamics, education policy, and opportunities for the advancing policy by increasing an understanding of system dynamics, which is an emerging field. Speaking of extracurricular, although not all of these are extracurricular, but that's okay. But so speaking of extracurricular opportunities, there are a couple of policy opportunities that are uniquely Brown School that we really wanted to mention in terms of highlighting the MSP program, as well as opportunities that MSW and MPH students also take advantage of during their time at the school. So the first is a course that I have the privilege of co-teaching. We shorthand this as the DC course, but it's truly policymaking, advocacy, and analysis in the US legislative system. So the design of this course is to engage graduate students, some of whom have worked in legislative environments. Some have participated maybe in a lobby day previously. Others are brand new and have never shared a space with an elected official. And across all of these different experiences, students pick a topic that they're passionate about, work in a group to develop a policy brief and materials, meet with national leaders and advocacy specific to that topic, and then go on Capitol Hill, whether in person or virtually, and meet with legislators and their staff to advocate for these issues that they feel passionately about. And coming out of this class, this is not a drill, as we like to say. The offices take these visits very seriously, and legislators and Congress members previously have agreed to co-sponsor legislation or been so inspired by their student visits that they take action, which is one of the reasons why I like coming back to this course year after year. So thinking about the DC course as something that we strongly suggest, if you're considering the Brown School, to keep on your radar. We talked a little bit about the county executive internship opportunity that Angelica took advantage of. I'd also lift up and recognize St. Louis being uniquely positioned in terms of geographically. It's not every graduate school around the US where you have access to the state capital in order to be able to do an in-person kind of opportunity when those are available. And so the Jeff City legislative practicum takes place in the spring when the Missouri legislature is in session. Students wake up early, well, I guess depending on where you are in your academic or professional career, early can be subjective, but it's early, and carpool together to Jefferson City and spend the day on Capitol Hill, really getting that firsthand experience. And now with things virtually, we're so energized by seeing just the same amount of interest from students in these experiences. We've had students, participating and supporting legislators as, government and policy isn't stopping by any means due to the pandemic. And so the opportunities are still very much there for students. And then we also have had students who participate at the local level, not only the county executive's office, but Treasurer Tashara Jones, as well as with the Board of Aldermen. And looking at the different opportunities there are to get really enmeshed in local policy and local politics. Last but not least, the Graduate Policy Scholars Program, which Angelica is actually the program ambassador as she completed the program last year during her MSP program. But this is a year-long extracurricular program that's completed by many MSP students and many graduate policy scholars then go on to MSP. It's this wonderful cycle, but it's open to all graduate students at Washington University. So I'll say that one more time, all students at Washington, or all graduate students at Washington University. It's a terrific chance to get to know a great community of classmates, both within and outside the Brown School. Students learn, they participate in trainings, they create their own policy product that is showcased during the year, and they engage with policy leaders and experts coming into the Brown School, as well as by going outside of the school with or without the materials that they've created to do. And one of the things, again, that we're just so excited about is in our fourth year currently, it is our first entirely virtual. But we have the largest group of students to the program state completing the program this year. So we'd highly encourage everyone to take a closer look at this as well. And as you're thinking about the MSP program, be considering how becoming a graduate policy scholar from the Brown School at Washington University fits into your academic and professional plans. So what are our alumni up to? So just a couple of highlights here. Again, wanted to reinforce the different lanes of policy practice that our students typically fall into. So students are at this very moment working to advance social policy in a diverse range of fields: education, criminal justice, housing, gender discrimination, here in St. Louis, working nationally, and then of course abroad. Some students are creating new knowledge and evidence through work at think tanks or research centers. Many of our students go on to top PhD programs around the world: UCLA, University College of London, and of course the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. And last but certainly not least, our alumni are leading policy and programs globally with organizations like UNICEF and the Ricci Foundation. So no matter what your pathway is in policy, the Brown School is a fantastic place, and the MSP program specifically is a great platform and way to build your skills, knowledge, and network, both within any of these paths as well as across. So now I'm sure you're asking, what does the application look like? Well, I'm glad to tell you. So the application itself, very basically, contact and biographical information, a short essay, which is why policy, faculty recommendation, current resume or CV, and your transcripts. And then if you're applying as an international student, language scores. So the exciting thing about the MSP program and application process is that 100% of our students have received merit or need-based support to help to support and supplement their time in the program. So for dual degree students who are considering joining the Brown School or who are already at the Brown School, this is completely separate from and in addition to any support or awards that you've received or will receive for the MSW or MPH programs. And there's a couple of key dates coming up. December 15th is the application deadline for priority consideration. So not tomorrow, but also not too far off into the future. And March 1st is for regular decision and then rolling from there. We'll pause there and say just a heartfelt and huge thank you for spending the time with us over the lunch hour to learn a little bit more about the MSP program, the Brown School, and we'd love to hear questions that folks have in the chat. And I think we've collected a few coming into the session as well that we can refer back to and bring into the space. So thanks again. Feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will make our way through those and have a bit of a discussion with the time that we've got left. Thank you, Sarah. Great question from Mariana. So does the internship experience have to go through partners that the school already has, or do students venture out to their interests and get the internship approved? This is going to be my first and favorite yes and of my Thursday. So it's definitely both. So the Brown School has hundreds of affiliated partners across their 3 programs in a wide range of sites and hosts of different focuses. And we recognize that students have a diverse range of interests and there's no shortage of places to go and practice policy. So students are welcome and encouraged to draw from and explore some of the opportunities from longstanding partners of the school, as well as kind of carve their own or trailblaze their own paths. I believe, if I remember correctly, there are 17,000 nonprofits in Missouri alone, which always gives me a little bit of pause when I think about. And so thinking about the opportunities, right here in St. Louis to impact policy in a variety of spaces is very much real. Michael, sounds like you're facing a tough decision coming up. So happy to talk to you further about any of those decision points or any of the considerations that you have between choosing between different program opportunities. Getting back, I struggle even to decide where to spend my lunch hour. So I totally appreciate the sentiment. Do we recommend applying to graduate school immediately out of undergrad, or should students gain relevant experience in the real world first? So there isn't one size fits all answer to this question. And I can speak from my own personal experience where I went essentially directly into my graduate program after finishing undergraduate many years ago. And so, based on kind of where you're coming into the program, your program or programs can look a little bit different. And so we have many students who approach the MSW program, for example, or MPH as advanced standing students, and their program just looks a little bit different because of what they've done in undergraduate, and then tying in some of their professional experiences as well to amplify their experience. And the same thing with the MSP program. The MSP program in particular is designed for people with graduate level experience. But we have a number of students who have gone straight through undergraduate through graduate school and been incredibly successful in the program. So happy to talk a little bit more about that if you had a specific kind of question or what you were weighing between getting some experience professionally or going right into graduate school, to be sure. Thanks for the great question.
Yeah, I also want to echo Dan. It looks different for everyone. I actually took a year, I won't say gap year because I was working, but I did take a year to figure out if social work or grad school in general, if that was for me. So.
Definitely. A great question from Crystal. So thinking about recommendations. And so I think with any letter of recommendation process, your strongest letter is going to come from someone who knows you and who can speak to your both work you've done previously, as well as thinking forward about the impact that you'll have in your future work and career. And so it's not prescriptive that that your recommender needs to have seen you in deep policy environments. Actually, a number of our students enter the program because they're interested in starting to jump into policy environments. And so previous policy experience is not a prerequisite for success in the program. Passion and interest, though, definitely. So if you're in your recommendation for the MSP program specifically, you have a faculty in particular, an instructor previously. If you've been out of graduate school for a significant amount of time, someone professionally who can kind of speak to the things that would lead to success in a graduate school environment and beyond. That will typically set up the best letters, in terms of building an application that's really comprehensive looking across. Nicholas, I'm curious actually if you wouldn't mind sharing, if you can even remember, it was probably so long ago, how you approached the recommendation letters for your dual degree.
Yeah, so I was thinking about the best people who could highlight my different experiences. Because when I applied for the Master of Social Policy, I did it concurrently with the Master of Social Work program. So I applied both before I entered. And I wanted very holistically professional references as well as faculty references that I had in my undergrad, because I also worked post my bachelor degree. So I wanted the people who saw my application to see the whole picture.
Thank you for that, Nicholas.
Dan, there are some questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom.
Oh.
One student asked, for students who are financially in need, what is the usual percentage of coverage that merit/need-based scholarships provide? Does it vary for current students versus new incoming students?
Yeah, the financial implications of graduate school in general are very real. And the school has a strong commitment to meeting students as best as they're able to help make the programs that they're interested in possible for them. And so they're really, in terms of the when's best to apply, the application process and financial aid, need-based and merit-based, the application is designed or intended in a way to not necessarily favor new students versus current students adding it on. I would say that current students, regardless of whether you are newly adding on the MSP or coming in as a dual degree, have the opportunity at the end of each academic year to apply for a new pot of continuing student scholarships, which are uniquely made for students who are enrolled at the Brown School, in addition to any awards that have currently been allocated. I'm actually going to turn things over to Sarah Dexter, who had a response on that as well.
There, I was actually in the middle of typing a response as you answered it. So I think just to echo everything what Dan was saying is and this goes into a question that William had as well, the different deadlines. So the December 15th deadline, the priority deadline, opens you up to all the funding available for our programs. And so if funding is a concern, which it is, any of our applicants, then we recommend you to apply by that December 15th deadline. And those merit-based awards are provided per program, as I think Dan mentioned as well. And so if you do want to be considered by that December 15th deadline, we do need all of your application materials by that date. If it's a little bit later, say it comes in, a recommendation letter comes in like the 20th or something, that's totally fair. We recognize that you are submitting your application around that date, but we do encourage folks to apply as soon as possible. And as for the need-based, yes, that I believe is going live this week, if it isn't already live. So as soon as you apply to the programs or multiple programs, you can also apply for that need-based scholarship as well.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Sarah, for chiming in and the great context and details on that one. And then another question in the Q&A, if you have a master's degree unrelated to policy or social work, but your career is related, is there a way to participate in this program? So I'll take this one and I'll just offer in terms of thinking about both existentially what's related to policy. And sometimes I'm hard pressed thinking about fields that don't have a connection to policy when we really think about how universal policy is in terms of impacting, our everyday lives and the communities that many disciplines seek to serve, to understand. So there's not a prerequisite for the paired degree of it being in a social work or public health program. If you have any questions or concerns about your specific graduate work or professional degrees and how that fits in with a policy degree program, please do feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to have that conversation. But if you have a graduate degree from an accredited US university, you are eligible to apply for the MSP program. Thank you for the great question. All right, I'm going to go back over to the chat now. I'm going to go back and forth between chat and Q&A. Let's see what's coming here. So Randy had a question about the undergraduate or graduate scores in terms of thinking about what you're submitting with your transcripts. And so for application to the Brown School, we would accept transcripts from your previous academic degrees and programs, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. Can you apply to a dual degree with just one application? The application processes and cycles for the programs are distinct from each other. And so you apply to each separately, but we've tried, especially with the MSP program, to make it as straightforward as possible and as low of a burden as possible in terms of what's required, while still giving us sufficient information and insight into the applicants. So thanks for the question, and especially for students who are interested in the MPH MSP dual degree, the MPH application runs through a centralized system as well. So you'd apply to both or any of the programs individually, get acceptance awards and scholarship awards uniquely for each program, and then you'd be able to make a decision about the program combination that you're interested in pursuing at the school. Great questions coming through. Can you add on the MSP during your MSW if you are advanced standing? Yes. So for Brown School students who are interested in the dual degree, you have two options. You can apply either as a prospective student to this school. Many students take advantage of this option because you can plan for your program from the very beginning. Nicholas is a great example of that. Angelica actually applied and added in the MSP program during her first year at the school. And so specifically to advanced standing students are welcome to take either path. I think the only thing to be cognizant of as an advanced standing student, whether it's a 12-month program or an 18-month program, is just the timing of the application and when you'd want to start the program. Especially with the 18-month program, most students do a fall-spring sequencing of MSP. But we do have a pathway and a program option for people who are interested in a spring start, which was actually inspired by advanced standing students being interested in the program just a couple of years ago. So thanks for the great question. I'm happy to talk more specifics for anyone's individual thinking or approaching to the sequencing. Great questions. All right. And then how does an MSP compare with an MPA or MPP? Terrific question. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about that as someone who has an MPA with a public policy concentration. The MSP is designed and reflective of the foundational policy competencies and skills and knowledge that anyone looking to work in the policy field would take away from it. I think a social policy degree, and the Brown School isn't alone in offering a social policy degree. Our counterparts at Penn and Brandeis and other top schools have also offered a social policy degree, thinking about the important intersections of social welfare, social work, and policy. And so building on some of those key and critical foundations, and thinking about entering a school and a program where the connection and the driving motivation for students to be there is shared in terms of advancing social welfare, advancing social change and equity, versus MPA or MPP programs, which that might be an opportunity or a lane that you can be in within that larger program, but it's not the foundation or the backbone of what's driving your coursework. So no matter whether you're in a statistics class, an economics class, a management class, that framework is going to be consistent in all of the coursework that you take in the program, which we think sets people up who want to work in social policy and social welfare, social change, up for the best chance of success and an impact in the work, academic and professional, that lies ahead. Thanks for the great question. Just doing a quick scan of the chat. I wish there was some really great elevator music playing behind me to help to cue it along. If there are other questions, by all means, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. You can add them to the chat. Thanks for the kind words at the end of the presentation in the chat as I'm looking back up through. Really glad that people enjoyed the presentation and found it insightful and inspiring. And then I can just quickly touch on a couple of things that came through even before we got started. And while I look through these questions, we've got a great question. What is community as a grad student like? So perhaps I could turn to our graduate students to talk about that.
Oh, Nicholas, I don't know who wants to go first.
You can go first.
I was going to type in my answer, but when I consider the community for me and what it has looked like, it really has looked like my friends and my classmates and all of us kind of going through graduate struggles together, and all of that encompasses being a grad student. My friends and my classmates have been my biggest supporters, and much of what my community looks like.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say that my classmates and the community that I've created at the Brown School have been my biggest support throughout my first semester so far. We encourage each other, we push each other, we try to expand each other's perspectives. It's really awesome.
And then I've seen a couple of questions come in about internship and practicum. And so for the program model and design, if you do a dual degree at the Brown School, you're completing the practicum or internship requirements separate from each other. We have faculty, the field education office, and a number of colleagues and staff and fellow students to help support in terms of thinking about how to approach multiple practicum or internship opportunities so they're adding the most value, so they're complementing each other. So you're getting skills and knowledge and connections from those that are really advancing the work you're interested in doing. And in terms of how students are thinking about their MSP internship in particular, we see students going on from their internship and then working full time at organizations where they're located. It's a great opportunity for a foot in the door for a lot of places, so to speak, and then springboarding into a wide range of different opportunities. For students who are more interested in research and analysis, it's also a great opportunity, in addition to the policy practice or the legislative opportunities, to get full-time experience in a research and analysis policy environment as well. So again, these opportunities aren't better than each other. I think that the students who have kind of reported back to us that they've had the best experiences are just being very deliberate about what they're hoping to get out of the program, and even if that evolves over time, the choices that they're making are leading to a future outcome or a goal that they have. And that's whether you want to hyper focus in on one specific area or get a little bit of everything in terms of the experience that you have. So we'll hang back for just another moment or two in case there are any last questions that people were hoping that we'd address already that we haven't had a chance to talk about. I'll put the slide back up one more time. That has our contact information. And so that's myself. And then I also work closely with Lin Wang Fu, who's our global programs manager, and works very closely with our partner universities and our international students, as well as an advisor for the MSP program more broadly. So as you have questions about the program, about the Brown School, you've got a great community of students, of faculty, and of staff who are ready to meet with you and to talk about your interests, whether that's specifically in the MSP program or about policy opportunities at the Brown School more broadly, from the day that you think that you might be interested to apply all the way through when you're a program and school alum. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. We truly appreciated sharing the space with everyone over your 12 o'clock, your noon hour, at least in Central Standard Time. And as Sarah is mentioning, you can of course also always reach out to Brown admissions at woostel.edu. And thank you from familiar names and new ones as well in the chat. We'll really look forward to hearing more from you in the days, weeks, months to come, and perhaps welcoming you to the MSP program, and even for some, the Brown School at large. So thanks again so much for the time. Thank you so much, Nicholas and Angelica, for sharing your experience. And we'll see everyone again very soon. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.